Hello, everybody. This is a gesture production. Alright, so here is the second X article. Um, for the 12 article series that I'm doing. And so this has to do with the 5 dreams that mapped my life before I lived it. Or at least that's what I believe. So in 1999 to 2000, this is kind of when that began. And although it extended like maybe the next 5 years afterward, at least the last dream was 5 years, and the second to last dream was maybe 4 years, something like that. Um, but so and Brian was gone. I had a series of 5 dreams that laid out what I believe my entire path. So the downfall and hope, the breakthrough, the resurrection, and what comes after. I was 16. I really didn't understand them then, but I believe that I do now. So these were not ordinary dreams. They were layered, prophetic, strangely literal. They showed me the low timeline trap I'd fall into and the high timeline escape I'd make. And here they are, exactly as I remember them. So I'm going to actually tell you about the dreams instead of reading this verbatim, because this was just kind of like a condensed version of it. So the triple layer cage is what we're gonna call this one. This was a dream inside a dream inside a dream. So at the time I was living in McKinney, Texas, and I woke up in the dream and I had to pee. And so I exited my bedroom and went to the right. And oddly, there were like 4 flat screen TVs that my stepsister and her sister were watching. And I was thinking in my head at that time, like, how could we afford these? I believe around that time was when flat screen TVs were also kind of coming out, and they were quite expensive. Um, but I thought it was weird, but I had to go to the bathroom, so I really didn't give them too much thought beside what I just said. But then something strange happened when I went to go to the bathroom. I tried closing the door when I noticed the bathroom door was off the hinges and I couldn't get it back together. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to take a piss in front of my stepsister and friend. About that time they would have been like, what, maybe 13 or 14, at least my stepsister. Her friend was a little younger than her, like by like 2 years, I think. And then I was like, so I went through the living room to my parents' bedroom, and when I opened that door, it was weird because it was like the walls were plastic, but not just any kind of plastic. Like, I used to work in a dairy cooler at Tom Thumb or a produce cooler at Tom Thumb. I did a lot of stocking stuff. Um, and it looked like those plastic things that you walk through in order to get into the um, freezer or the cooler. And I could see my sister outside riding a tricycle, which was also odd because she wasn't that young at that time. Like, she wasn't 3, and she was at least 9 or 10. And I thought that was weird. Um, and then I was going to their bathroom, and then I saw them walk out of the bathroom. My dad and my stepmother at the time, and they just like jumped into having sex, and I was like, okay, I'm getting out of here. And so I went back to my bed. The weird thing was, is when I was coming back, I don't think I saw my stepsister and her friend in the hallway watching TV, but I didn't really give that much thought. I still had to pee. I just went back to bed and went to sleep. I was like, I'll just sleep 30 minutes and maybe everything will change. Um, and then I woke up again, still having to pee. But this time, I was in my room, and my dad and my brother had like barged in, and that's what woke me up. And I was like shocked, and I was like, "What's going on? What's?" Because my brother is older than me, and at that time he was living in Missouri. So I was like, "This is completely strange." I'm like, "What's going on? Is there an emergency?" And they started what appeared to be like shouting. Like I could hear myself, but I couldn't hear them. And then they pointed at the radio, and there was a gift that I didn't choose to open. And then they kept shouting, and I kept looking. I was like, I'll open it later. I'm tired, and I gotta go to the bathroom. But I didn't want to go to the bathroom at that time because I would have to go through them, and I didn't feel like hearing a lecture. So, I mean, they ended up leaving, and I was still tired, and I was like, fuck it. And I went back to sleep. And I understand what that meant now. Okay, so the first dream was just kind of like eh, everything was weird. Everything was out of tune, basically. And that followed the same path with my dad and my brother, except I couldn't hear them. Which, in a lot of ways, I feel is happening right now when I'm trying to speak to people, is they don't necessarily hear me. But I know why that is. It's because I'm on a different frequency. See, when Brian, my huge main assumption is that Brian came back from time, somewhere in the future. And I haven't, I'm not even to the future point. I don't know if I am. Like, I don't know how far in the future he was. Um, it could be, I'm thinking at least maybe 10 years from now. Maybe 15. Um, but what, when he came back and he did what he did, it changed my frequency. In other words, there was a clear path on the timeline. And when he came back, he changed my past. And my thinking is that when he did that, it also changed my frequency to where people couldn't really understand me. And I really noticed that shift after I graduated high school. That really seems to be where everything started splitting off a lot, to where I would say, well, actually around 2001 even, it was still happening. But it took a more progression after I graduated. But yeah, so it's symbolizing that I'm on a different frequency. And apparently the frequency I'm on, at least I'm hoping, I mean, this is a major assumption. Well, I wouldn't say major assumption. I mean, there's evidence to back it up, but it's my evidence, is that I'm on a different path. And we're coming to this here soon time where like the timelines are converging. And we're going to get to this point here soon, probably in about 10 years, maybe a little less, where they split into two different things. And one of them, 90% of the population dies. And in the other one is the high timeline that Channy's talking about. Now, I don't know if we automatically jump into it or there's some kind of progression that leads us up to that path. But the major split to that happens in about 10 years or less or more. I'd say maybe plus or minus 3 years. That's a major assumption of mine. But something definitely changed in me when that 1998 moment happened. Okay, so that's, and then going on to the next one, because I went to bed and then I woke up again, except this time I was in Joplin, Missouri, which really freaked me out in the dream because I was like, how did I go from McKinney, Texas to Joplin, Missouri? And I was in my grandparents' house and I walked around and nobody was home. And I thought this was really freaking strange. And then I went into the kitchen. My grandma still had one of those old phones where you put your finger in and you know, spin the little dial to the number and all that kind of stuff. Like the really old phones from like the 1950s or 40s or something like that. And I was just and then these people showed up. And I was like, well, this is weird. Because I was like, who are you guys? And they told me that they were the owners of the house. And I go, no, my grandparents own this house. And they go, well, they don't now. And I go, well, I don't know how I got here, but can I call my dad so that he can come get me because I'm completely freaked out? And they told me yes. I was like, oh, okay, thank you. But I need to go to the bathroom first. Can I go downstairs? And so I go downstairs and I go to the bathroom and I'm looking out the window. And it's in the country, okay? And I see my husky and my dad's terrier, which I thought was strange if it wasn't their house. And they started shooting. Some people started shooting at them. And I was like, I ain't gonna be taking this. So I got done going to the bathroom. I flushed the toilet. I'm looking for a gun. And I find one. And I'm about to step out the back door. And then, boom, I see it. A blue freaking python. And the python slithers down and looks me straight in the eyes. And that's when I woke up. And that is some kind of significance right there. That the blue python represents spirituality. And transformation at that. And which I have. Okay, so this next one was also weird. The ship in the storm. Okay, this dream happened 2 nights in a row. The first night, it was just me on a ship traveling, and it was a major storm. It was like violent waves. I didn't know if I was gonna make it to the destination alive. I was hoping. And I woke up, and then the next night, well, I believe I did end up landing on land. In the first night of the dream. In the second night of the dream, that's when I was walking on the land and I met the old man. And the old man, like, raised me up to, like, a mountain. Like, I mean, literally, the earth moved, like, up. And it became mountainous. And then there was this bridge that connected 2 points. And they had samurai on them. And the old man said, once you're ready, all you'll have to do is walk past them, and they'll fall one by one. Nothing will be able to stop you. And so I did that. I walked past them, and one by one they fell. And then he said, the only challenge that you'll have in a bubble kind of appeared when I looked up at the sky. And it goes, is this right here? And it showed me as a knight fighting a red dragon. And that dream ended there. And I'm thinking what that means, especially when it came to the bridge, was that somehow I might be the bridge to this higher path, this higher timeline. I'm not saying that I'm the only one who can be a bridge. I'm just reflecting what I know from studying dreams. Um, Now, okay, so and the red dragon symbolizes something deep, and the samurai too. That's the old or the low timeline trying to keep me on the low timeline when it can't. Okay, so the next one, and um, I'm gonna show you something, but the next one has to do with these dual reels. Okay, so um, okay, and to put that in perspective, before I go back to the article, I jump to my home screen, and I'm gonna show you this. Okay, so this was something of what it looked like. Okay, except, okay, so let's just take this right here, for example, what's on the left. This has been up here for a long time. Okay, so at first I was just seeing something like this, but it was me, and I was suffering. And as the dream moved forward, and it was weird because the way how it was like showing me was kind of like you'd see in an old movie projector, or like somebody flipping like paper and recording it, because you could see like the changes, like you would see the film reel basically, you know how it has that space between, I don't know what you call it, but the film between the film, like each frame, and which I thought was weird, but it just started on me and me suffering, and it came to this point to where I was like losing my teeth and hair, and then in the corner you would see this other reel start coming in, and it was beginning to dominate the other one. And what it showed me was me regenerating and me having my teeth again and my hair back again. And I thought that was quite interesting, and also interesting with some of the technology that we're seeing with being able to basically reverse age and all that stuff. And I think it was showing me what was going on, like where the divided moment is coming, and we're getting close to that divided moment. And in the other one, it seemed like I was doing way good. Like I looked like my 16-year-old self again, or 18-year-old self again. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So it's showing me, you know, when like we're getting close to this path. And so it's kind of like there's two different sets of film, but the um, the one that was coming in over here soon began to dominate what was right here. And this one over here on the right that was coming in and new was the lot better path. And by the end of the dream, it was the full screen picture. Okay. So, let's jump back. Okay, these next two dreams are really brief. So in the next dream, I was on a hospital bed. The doctor said that, you know, I was dying of HIV, which I thought was weird because I didn't have HIV. but I was dying, and I did die. But as soon as I died, I came back to life. And when I came back to life, the doctors couldn't believe it. And then they tested my blood, and they said that my blood was a cure to end all things. Um, and then the last dream I had, it was around 2004, 2005. Well, I mean, I've had other dreams, but I don't think any related to this. Was I was walking toward a water fountain, and Jesus was at the water fountain. And we had a conversation, but I couldn't really remember the conversation. And when we were in the conversation, it was like everything was from a like a third person perspective. But when Jesus grabbed the Bible, it entered me into a first person perspective. And in that first person perspective, Jesus opened the Bible. He looked at Genesis and he pointed at the words, and I said them, "Let there be light." And I woke up. So let there be light. And I believe we're going to see a lot of those, especially the let there be light. I'm wondering if the let there be light is the part where we get possibly the second sun. If that's true in the Channy Project. That may not necessarily be a sun, just a more visible planet. That ends up lighting up the nighttime. That's the key factor in this whole transformation thing, is that second light. Because the moon is a disruptor, and we'll get into that. And because next week we're going to start talking about me and Channy and kind of like what I've discovered, kind of going through that whole process. So that was what was surrounding Article 2 in this series. We'll call it the Convergence series. But yeah, so that's it. I'm done with this video, and I will see you next Wednesday. I won't be doing a video Saturday, but I might be doing another advertising video next Saturday if I have time. And this has been This is the Convergence series production. And I will see you next Wednesday. Alright, y'all have a good one.